It is a remarkable thought that the lawyers who had lunch at Puckett's yesterday were discussing the Constitution. They were arguing about provisions in the Bill of Rights because one of them had read a book that suggested that there might be an erosion brought about by their clan against the people and against the rights enumerated therein. Now, as they had a great lunch at Puckett's downtown and went into the parking lot, a copy of the Constitution, a printout of the Constitution, slipped out of the binder of one of the attorneys, one of the older men in the baggy suit, and there it lay in the parking lot. Now, it's an odd thing to think what happened with that Constitution copy, because an hour later, though it lay there shuddering a bit in the wind, an hour later, a small spaceship landed in the Puckett's parking lot downtown. And out from it stepped an alien, and he picked it up and started reading it. And not knowing really much about the race of beings among whom he had landed, in whose very strange city he had landed, he started reading the Constitution, and and made note. He made note that he determined that before he would use his eyes or his sensory organs to learn more about the beings among whom he had landed, he would read this document, which he was able to do because he had some knowledge of intergalactic means of communication, English being, of course, the main one, right? English is the global language, and little do we know, it is the language of intergalactic travel. And he picks up this Constitution and says, this is a very interesting law. And he finds that the law there, the Constitution of Tennessee, is one that is a kind of pushing away motion of the hand, if you will. It goes like this. If you're watching me on YouTube here, Dave, on the David Tulis Show, you can see that I'm pushing you away. I'm brushing you away from me like you're a fly, and I'm pressing you into the other room or away from my nose, right? Keeping you away. And that's what the Constitution does. It pushes back the state. That is what the purpose of a Constitution is, to limit the state, to ordain, to ordain the state of Tennessee, and then to restrain it in the Bill of Rights. That's the first action of the Constitution in the Bill of Rights, is to push back, restrain, limit, delimit, and control and shorten, if you will, the authorities elsewhere granted. And that is the nature of government, of the civil magistrate, is to exercise powers against the people. That's what government is all about. The civil magistrate is always against the people, particularly against the evil among them, right? It is a moral document. It has an understanding of the fall. And because we're a fallen race, we have to have courts, we have to have laws, we have to have prohibitions, requirements, and so on to make us better people. That's, in a nutshell, why we have civil government. The Christian analysis, of course, is that the civil government and civil law and statutes can't make anybody good. They have no power of remediation and conversion. They're simply accusing. They accuse man of sin. They accuse man of the fall, as St. Paul says. The law is the schoolmaster. So too is the Constitution. So too our statutes, to tell us where we're wrong and to tell us how we need to be better. Though they in themselves have no means of regeneration. That, of course, is a spiritual task that the Bible teaches, and the Sunday school lesson you heard as a boy once you attended church, that was what you heard then, is that the Holy Spirit and God regenerate man from within, and there's a law that's written within. But nonetheless, we have an external system of law, a coercive system of law, and that's the civil law enforced by courts, and anymore by many other parties as well, who have no judicial standing at all, but more executive branch people. And that would be through regulation and policing, right? Policing is an executive function, and seeks to bring some harassment of people, perhaps even bad people. And here the alien is. He's looking over this document. It says Constitution of the State of Tennessee, Preamble and Declaration of Rights, and he starts reading in Article 1, the Declaration of Rights. And he's trying to get here an idea of, well, what is this thing created in this preamble, and why now do we have to have rights? Against whom are these rights aimed? And that is how it works. States have authority, governments have authority. They don't have rights. They don't exercise rights at all. You do, right? It's a mistake often made by journalists that the officer had a right to do something. No, officers don't have rights. Regulators don't have rights. legislators and agents don't enforcers, bank rule enforcers, and 10-care enforcers. They don't have rights. They have authority. They have authority, and the people have the rights. The rights belong to us, and they are always in defiance against the claim of authority. Now, if there is an authority that reaches against you, my listener, it has to be a lawful one, right? And that is one of our interests here. And we make that argument because in the proper use of law, the proper exercise of law, and within its limits, there is protection and benefit. There has to be some way to account for the fall, and you might say violence and injury, right? Violence and injury done by the evil, the wicked, and the negligent, in the interest of public morals, right? Public morals and safety and property rights and the right to life, all of which are protected by law recognized in the Constitution. So the alien says, okay, so all power is inherent in the people. It says, and all free governments are founded on their authority and instituted for their peace, safety, and happiness. Well, he rubs his chin on that. For the advancement of those ends, they have at all times an unalienable and inalienable right to alter, reform, or abolish the government in such manner as they may think proper. The word unalienable is crucial because an unalienable right is one that you can't surrender. Inalienable rights, starting in about 1910, were rights that are God-given, but they're ones that you can trade away in commerce. They are ones that you can negotiate away. Those are called inalienable rights. They can't be taken from you, but they can be yielded, right? They're called inalienable. But here we have a reference to the sturdier sort of personal right, and that's the unalienable kind. And the second section says, government being instituted for the common benefit, the doctrine of non-resistance against arbitrary power and oppression is absurd, slavish, and destructive of the good and happiness of mankind. So the idea of not resisting, of not rebelling against abuse, that is slavish and absurd. So think about that if you ever have an encounter with the good people and the enforcement arm thereof. It is slavish to not resist and not rebel against it. So rebellion, resistance and rebellion are the same thing, though resistance sounds less aggressive. They are, in fact, identical concepts, though most people, especially if they're Christians, would say, well, I'd rather be resisting than rebellious, because rebellion is condemned in the Bible as a kind of witchcraft. But what's in view there is rebellion against the idea of the judge, right? Not against abuse of his office, but against the idea of judge. That is rebellion. When you think that there cannot be God's minister for justice, which he has ordained to be, Romans 13. He's ordained to be there. If you recall your what you heard in Sunday school when you were a boy, right? He does have the authority to be there and to wield the sword, but it has to be in justice and pursuant to the Ten Commandments and not go beyond that. But of course, today, states, governments, kings, and authorities ignore the limits God places upon them. But the Constitution, this alien notices as he reads on, has more to say. For example, all men have a natural and indefeasible right to worship Almighty God according to the dictates of their own conscience. And it goes on to say, no man can of right be compelled to attend, erect, or support any place of worship, or to maintain any minister against his consent, that no human authority can, in any case whatever, control or interfere with the rights of conscience, and that no preference shall ever be given by any law to any religious establishment or mode of worship. And we are at 800-8949, 800-8949. Jay Hirsch is bringing up these issues, and this holds essentially that all Christian denominations, all Christian sects are equal before the law. There's no favor for, let's say, Methodist over Presbyterian or Catholic over Church of God. Also, the alien notices that there is a protection against unreasonable searches and seizures. In Section 7, the people shall be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and possessions from unreasonable searches and seizures, and that general warrants whereby an officer may be commanded to search suspected places without evidence of the fact committed. In other words, he has to have an affidavit that a crime has been committed, or to seize any person or persons not named whose offenses are not particularly described and supported by evidence are dangerous to liberty and ought not to be granted. So when the officer stops you on the side of the road, he usually can't meet this test. Okay, he doesn't have an idea of a crime committed, but he wants you to start talking with him so that you'll make an admission that will give him the probable cause that he wants to have. He can taste it, but he doesn't quite have it in his mouth, right? You have to spoon feed it to him by jawboning, rather than obey the strict warning that Michael Flynn ignored, and that is, don't talk to cops. Michael Flynn and Martha Stewart alike, and dozens of other noted defendants, got in trouble by making statements, and they should have just kept their traps shut and said, just indict me. Just indict me. The alien goes on, as now he's trying to figure out whether he wants to go and have lunch in Puckett's or not, there by the aquarium, a great restaurant, by the way. He goes on to read further in section 9. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused hath as biblical hath the right to be heard by himself and his counsel, to demand the nature and cause of the accusation against him, and to have a copy thereof to meet the witnesses face to face, and to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor. And it goes on. But the idea of the nature and cause, many cases are brought against defendants in Hamilton County, and the nature and cause is not determined, okay? And people don't know that they have the authority to have a hearing demanding what is the nature and cause. And many of these claims against people like you, my listener, rise out of commercial authority, commercial jurisdiction. No person arrested and confined in jail shall be treated with unnecessary rigor. The alien smiles at that because he's been in the hoosgow of other parties in the universe. No person shall be put to answer any criminal charge, he reads, but by presentment, indictment, or impeachment. I'm not talking to you. The human should be saying, but you can indict me. In other words, make an accusation and get the people to ratify the accusation as possibly suggesting the evidence of a crime, and then we'll have a hearing on it. That's a trial before the petit jury, and I'll clear myself there. That's what you should always ask for. Don't try to clear yourself in an interview, because the cop or the regular already has a transcript of your conversation that the NSA unconstitutionally stole and gave to him. And he's got a total record of what you said before. So don't try to wiggle out of it, okay? Don't try, as Michael Flynn did. Michael Flynn was interviewed by people who had the total transcript of what he had said on the phone, and he lied about it or misremembered, right? So that is something you should never do. Don't make statements, right? Don't make statements. In section 15, the alien reads, as he's figuring out that he's going to have a great lunch at Puckett's today. All courts shall be open, and every man, for an injury done him in his lands, goods, and person or reputation, shall have remedy by due course of law, and right and justice administered without sale, denial, or delay. And the printing press is free. In the printing press provision in section 19, there's this that you may not be aware. We have a free press in the state. The press is absolutely free, not subject to the state at any point. And it says at the end here that in a case for libel, in all indictments for libel, which is a criminal offense, the jury shall have a right to determine the law and the facts under the direction of the court, as in other criminal cases. So we have here what's called jury rights power, the power of jury nullification. The jury, you, my listener, have authority here in Tennessee, our great free state, to judge the law and the facts. Though Judge Poole and Judge Steelman and other judges, even in circuit court, will tell you that you don't have that authority. In fact, you do. And here it is in the Constitution. You have the right to determine the law. To determine the law, to see the law for what it is and what it is not. And you can make it not apply if you want to. It's totally up to you. And we're also told that perpetuities and monopolies are contrary to the genius of a free people, a free state, and shall not be allowed. We have these. The Department of Safety and Homeland Security is, in fact, a cartel, a monopoly, a corporate interest where the state as a corporation expands its market share by coercion. And that is what's being done against Hispanics, against the poor, where the highly discriminatory enforcement mechanisms of state patrol officers and police departments in municipal corporations that may not have that actual authority to exercise, and the exercise of enforcement power by sheriff's departments across the state in its 95 counties, enforcing this perpetuity and monopoly, serving Governor Bill Haslam. the governor of Tennessee. This is David Tulis, and I think I've got his name right. In Section 23, the alien notices as he decides he's trying not to draw a notice to himself. Right, he's going past the gatekeeper there at Puckett's for a bite of lunch. The citizens have a right in a peaceable manner to assemble together for their common good, to instruct their representatives, and to apply. Let's see. To those invested with the powers of government for redress of grievances or other proper purposes by address or remonstrance. So the people have the right to remonstrate, to scold and chide their officials, and gather freely without permission. They don't have to have permission. They don't have to have a permit. They can gather as they please, in any number they please. And go on. There are some points of controversy that the alien, once he catches up with the lawyers and asks them for picking up the trash they left behind, because that is what the Constitution is to lawyers. It is just a bit of trash. Here, take this with you. He might want to ask them about Section 26, which is the right to bear arms. And the alien, our visitor, reads that the citizens of the state have a right to keep and bear arms for their common defense, military weapons. But the legislature shall have power by law to regulate the wearing of arms with a view to prevent crime. And here, the alien doesn't know this, but we have an unconstitutionally vague statute called the carrying a weapon with the intent to go armed statute, which is written against people who were called at the time Negroes, right? It's an anti-Negro legislation that the Republicans and the Democrats brought about, and which both parties uphold and want to secure, and hope you won't notice that it's unconstitutionally vague, unenforceable, and really it's a nullity and void, but it's going to have brave judges to hear the arguments of its uncertainty, of its vagueness. The regulation is on the wearing of arms, and yet the legislature has a bizarre system under a ban, the total ban of weapons in Tennessee, with exceptions. So carrying a weapon has as a defense that you have a permit, okay? Carrying a weapon in your car has a defense that you own the car, right? That the title of the car in which the weapon is hidden is in your name, right? If you're in your wife's car and you're carrying a weapon and it's titled to her, legally you're breaking the law, right? It is a statute that is honeycombed with traps all through this statute. It's a mess. It is an absolute mess. And the Tennessee Firearms Association and John Harris need to get cracking in overturning it. But apparently it's going to be left to an independent businessman in Middle Tennessee. Now, also in the same vein about monopolies, no hereditary emoluments, privileges, or honors shall ever be granted or conferred in the state. Our alien friend is noting. Now, here at the very end of the miscellaneous provisions, there's this. Section 16 in Article 11. He doesn't know the details here, but he's just going to read this. And it says, the Declaration of Rights hereto prefixed at the beginning, is referring back to the beginning of the Constitution, is declared to be a part of the Constitution of the state, and shall never be violated on any pretense whatsoever, under any pretense whatsoever. The rights, the Bill of Rights, this alien is being told, this stranger is being told, cannot be violated. And to guard against transgression of the high powers we have delegated, we declare that everything in the Bill of Rights contained is cut out of the general powers of the government, and shall forever remain inviolate. So the Bill of Rights is inviolate. And yet we're seeing how the Tennessee General Assembly, with the cooperation of the divisions of the state, including the counties, such as Ray County, with its pending Nazi ordinance, its Nazi regulation of all human activity under the municipal authority of the county. We have the reminder that these rights shall remain inviolate. That is to say, not in the color purple, but unable to be violated, free from the prospect of violation by the good people, right? The good people in the town hall, the good people in Washington, the good people in Nashville. For they all are very, very good, and in their shadow we live, as many thousands did in the old origin of Babylon, the Tower of Babel. honoring Nimrod and, you might say, local economy back there in those days when the people refused to scatter. They were supposed to scatter across the world, the earth, and take dominion, but they refused to. And they wanted to be under the power of the great one, the mighty one. And we have people like that today. Most people are of that kind. They need to be under somebody. They need to be under the state. They need to be under the judge, the officer, the regulator, the tax man, the boss, the employer. We don't have a lot of independent people anymore. But I hope with our labors here at Nooga Radio, David Tulis, that you, my listener, might think maybe, just maybe, of making some small steps, making a 1 or 2 degree change in your course of direction, because 10 years out, you'll be in a place you won't recognize now. You just consistently pursue liberty, pursue gracious service to others, and prosperity. David Tulis.
The Tennessee Valley's news talk leader, Nooga Radio, Digital FM 95.